get this. Okay,
Okay.
looks like it's going to go through.
It says we're now streaming live.
Okay, just give 1 second. I just want to make sure it comes through on the web. Get this. Okay, looks like it's going to go through. Okay, we're good. Thank you, Cliff.
So is this also on LMC 76 or?
No, it's not on LMC. It's broadcast on YouTube and it'll be archived on YouTube.
Right.
Okay.
I just wanted to get everyone's pulse on the minutes that Rob wrote from last month. Any corrections, or can I make a motion to approve them?
Second.
Somebody has to make the motion first.
Oh, I'll make the motion. I thought you made the motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. I basically took Rob's notes and reformatted them for tonight's meeting. So Dan, at our last meeting, we had talked about, we should be able to go back to flood claims from FEMA to find out how much the losses were from all those flood events, shouldn't we?
Yeah, we actually submitted a request to FEMA as part of a grant application we're working on for them to get us the information.
Okay.
I have not seen anything yet. I'm going to follow up with our grant writer. Perhaps she saw it. So.
Okay.
Dan,
Sorry?
when was that report submitted? Recently or years ago?
It was a request for information. I want to say it was in the last 3 weeks, give or take.
Okay,
I can give you the exact date later.
that's okay.
Tomorrow, once I'm in the office.
Have we written the letter to George Latimer from the village that he requested back in July?
Not yet. I will take care of it this week. I will work on it tomorrow and from home.
I gotta say, we've been hearing this one since July. This has to be done, or we're gonna look terrible in the eyes of the county.
Yeah, it will get done by Friday.
Okay. Save the sound.
Email to us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Save the sound and the bacteria monitoring for the road to nowhere. It seems as if they came back to say that there was no money to do it.
Well, it was, in addition, it was issues with social distancing, COVID-19 protocols. What Peter Linderoth suggested was pulling the information from the 3 sites north of that.
Don't have him waste his time, please, because that's not.
Well, no, it's work they already did. There are specific locations that they.
I know, Dan.
Oh, okay.
We were specifically looking to see what the effect is with those sewer lines going through the road to nowhere, especially after storms, and the amount of waste product, if I can be polite, that it's downriver. Ever, you know, and I just think if we don't do it right at the base of the road to nowhere, we're never going to prove to Harrison that this is a problem.
So Save the Sound couldn't do it this year. I don't know if they'll be able to do it next year. I'll follow up with Peter again. I don't know what position we're going to be in as far as COVID-19, social distancing requirements.
With all due respect, why would that make a difference if it's just one person setting water sample testing?
That was what was said to me by Peter.
Can we ask for a little clarification then, please?
I can ask for clarification, but I think it was also a fact of, you know, the resources. But I'll follow up.
You know, I've done this collection for Save the Sound before, and they do, because they have to collect all the samples within a certain amount of time. And I'm not sure this is their social distancing issue, but they have everyone come and get the sample packets at around the same time and drop them off at around the same time. And I wonder if there was just a problem having too many people come into their offices within I
also have been collecting samples for the past couple of years. This year, they did not allow volunteers to do it. So I'm sure they were short-staffed, but that doesn't explain why they didn't have it for prior years, other than this year.
Well, we've never asked, we've only asked in about the last, I would say, year to 18 months, and I'd have to go back through all of our minutes to figure out when we started asking for this. And it was clearly pre-COVID.
Yeah, no, it was towards the end of last year. I think I originally made the request of Peter, I want to say in February or March, to, if they could add this to their, some samples up there. So
The
that
disappointment
was-
is it's November and we just finally are hearing something back.
They get samples in June, July, and bit of August. That's when they do the samples.
You know, if you look at that sample sheet, I mean, it couldn't get much worse. In 2020, from those 3 sites, I mean, the fail rate is 91%, 100%, 55% for, swimming. Well, how about drinking? I mean, this has got to be E. coli. They don't say it. But if it's unsafe for swimming, even downstream from that, it's got to be god awful.
But if the point of this exercise was to try and convince Harrison that they need to cut back the road to nowhere and repair the sewer lines, which was the point of the exercise, we know the water is not good.
Yeah.
We're trying to convince Harrison that they need to deal with this.
Well,
Well, the
Yeah.
river at Saxon Woods
I-
Road,
I-
is
I
that
would-
in Harrison?
I'm sorry?
Is that in Harrison, Saxon Woods Road?
No, it's the road to nowhere, Paul.
No, but I mean the river at,
Paul is looking at the table.
Saxonwood Road, I
Saxon
think it's
Road
is in White Plains.
White Plains, okay.
Yeah, but it's right by the Hutch. It's by the, where it might be one of those deals where it's on one side of the road, it's White Plains, on the other side is Harrison.
Yeah, I mean,
I
so
think
close.
Saxon Woods Road, honestly, guys, is total White Plains. Saxon
Yeah.
Road is Mamaroneck.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Kelly, weren't you saying something?
oh, I was just going to say, we have, even without this sampling, talked to Harrison about this and they told us to pound sand. So
No, but if the more we
I
can
hear you. I
tell
know.
them that this is a problem, or we take this to the state DEC and say, here.
Yeah.
Maybe
I'm sorry if I'm sounding naive, but is there any way we can get the town to pay for this or the village to pay for this?
the
There's
test.
no, it's Harris. It's in Harrison.
Wait, do you mean the testing or the removal of the road, Steve?
The testing.
There is no money to spare.
I
We
mean,
couldn't go to a lab. There isn't enough money.
anecdotally, I know years ago I asked, there was a problem with the Florence Park and with the basketball courts. And Norm said he'd pay for it out of the mayor's money,
Yeah.
whatever the
well,
mayor's budget is. I mean, is there?
I don't know about a mayor's budget under
Yeah.
Tom Murphy. I don't know that he
Yeah.
has a mayor's budget.
Yeah.
I know Norm did things differently.
Yeah, I think the budget for the mayor basically, pays for the salary. I think maybe, if we need to, it goes to a conference, things like that. But
Can we find out what it would cost to test?
I could make a couple of calls.
If it's a few $100s, I'll pay for it.
Well, I don't know
Let's find
reach
out.
Well, I want to talk to Save the Sound because I don't know if there are protocols for how long you need to test for, those types of things. So I don't know what's entailed with a proper testing program. So I'll get some answers and I'll follow up.
Okay, that sounds good.
I mean, there are independent labs. One is Yorktown Labs. They do all that stuff.
I know there's some colleges and universities that do this type of work as well. But let me make a couple of calls. Like I said, I
Okay.
don't know what
That sounds good.
Yeah,
the proper
college-
process and protocol for it is.
Yeah, a college might be like a senior project or maybe even like Boy Scouts, on an environmental badge or something.
Well,
Did-
our
I'm
Right.
sorry, Dan, didn't one of the kids in Rhine Neck do a project for school a few years ago? They presented to the board. Do you remember that?
Yes.
yes, I
On
recall
Beaver
that.
Swamp or somewhere?
Mhm.
I can't, you're correct. I just can't remember what the overall project was and what they did.
No, but it might be worth looking into. Maybe we could get that teacher, if we could figure out who it was, maybe the teacher would have another group of kids that would want to do that as a project.
I'll refresh my recollection about that
Thank you.
project. It was,
Maybe
like
we
I said,
can.
it was,
Chief.
I want to say, it was at least 5 or 6 years ago, I think.
It could be, who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe as you, a Rhinebeck High School project or something. You know?
I think it was.
Yeah.
All right, let's look into that, because that might be a way around getting it done and getting it done relatively inexpensively. Okay, the weather service we had talked about, Dan, whether we're paying for this weather service that's been fairly inaccurate. Have we?
Well, I wouldn't say it's fairly inaccurate. It was
Well, on two
inaccurate one
storms, they
time.
got it really wrong when it was,
Well,
they predicted 6 inches and everyone else said 2 and it was 2. And it just seems we're paying, if we're trying to cut back on saving money, why are we paying for that?
I think it's good to have a weather service because we need highly localized predictions sometimes.
Well, NOAA has highly localized predictions.
Again, these are staff of, we can call up anytime and they'll give us what we need. So I think it's a good value. I'm not going to recommend getting rid of it or moving to something else.
Well, the committee was suggesting that maybe we should look into that. So are
And
you
the
vetoing
committee-
that? Is that the way I'm reading this?
No, the committee can do whatever they want.
Yeah, but you can certainly send a letter to Jerry and say, we have an issue with this, but it's not my recommendation to
Okay.
to get rid of the service.
What do the other people on the committee think? Anybody?
I'm not knowledgeable enough to choose one or the other. I don't know.
I would just start by, telling the weather service, get your act together.
I think it's kind of like depending on what news station you watch. If you watch Channel 7, Lee Goldberg is saying we're getting this, and you flip to Channel 4 and there other person's saying we're getting that. And
My only issue is that we're paying for it, and there are, between Weather Underground and NOAA, there are weather services that are free.
right, but you also need someone to be sitting there and monitoring those weather services as opposed to, I don't know, Dan, what did you make a phone call and they just tell you the information?
They'll work up a forecast and give it to you, in short order.
Right.
I mean, the other thing is I don't think necessarily the public, the free ones are very good either. I mean, how many times have we been said that we get this much snow and it'd be off too? So I don't know if there's really any good weather service that could.
Okay, we'll let it go, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think any of them are perfect. It's the only profession where you could be wrong 90% of the time and still get paid.
Okay,
Too many
Major League umpires.
okay. We had suggested legislation to the Board of Trustees. Kelly, I guess you're the best liaison, the best person to tell us about this one. Do you know what's happening with the?
Nothing has happened on this. We are so far backlogged in our work session agenda that it is sad. And as of last night, we were told once again, do not add new items.
Could
We
you
are
just tell
working
me,
through-
I'm sorry, could you tell me what the legislation is?
Yeah, the flood committee recommended 3 things. One, that pervious paving not be permitted under the building code in the village in new construction.
What kind of paving?
I'm sorry,
Impervious.
Oh,
I'm sorry, impervious, that
Yeah.
pervious be required. Second, that in the commercial zones, that all new building be done 2 feet above the flood level. And what was your third one, Peggy? I'm sorry.
I'm blanking on it. I'll have to look it up.
You want me to read it?
Sure, sure. Thanks, Robert.
Find a way to reconcile new construction applications so that every tree on the property is not.
Oh, trees. Yeah, so that
kind of review.
removal of trees be considered as part of the site plan review and construction.
Is
So
that something that the tree removal committee or the tree committee is going to be doing too? Is there some kind of new?
Yeah, the tree committee has been proposing, and they've been working on this for, I think, 8 years running. But a massive tree law that would be comprehensive for the village, and it has gone back and forth and back and forth. And I would say that maybe they're near the end, but maybe not.
So
But
is
the
that
tree
the same,
committee-
is that a similar tree law that we're talking about, or is it different?
The tree law, their tree law would cover this because it would cover removal of trees.
The town of Amerenik has a good tree law.
Yeah, they didn't go with that model, so.
Well,
But the point is, it would need a site plan review for any property being built in a flood zone.
Yes.
So that's a little, it drills it down a little more specifically for flood needs. So what do we think? This is going to take 6 months? It's going to take a year? Any ideas, Kelly?
I think it'll depend on how soon we are able to fully have staff working in the office and when we get a village engineer and when we get a planning department staffed up. And
So we're
Yeah.
looking a long way out.
I am afraid we are looking a long way out. We just we don't have staff. We're in a mess. We're in a bad place.
All right, well, at least that somewhat manages our expectations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing else.
Listen, and just tree laws in general can be very controversial.
Well,
And-
this was done to be separate from necessarily a
Okay.
large tree law. And that
Yeah.
was the point of this, because the tree law has been so lengthy and dramatic that if we slide this in a different angle, it will at least cover the flood point of it.
Would it make sense, since there's minimal legislative attention, to maybe merge the bills?
You know, I don't think it's minimal legislative attention. I think it needs a lot of research done, which I mean, the committee has not done that, but the village staff will need to do. We'll need to have the planners and the engineers involved. We'll have to look at what the model codes are, what other municipalities are doing, what makes sense. And then anytime you try to change the law, you are required to have public hearings that require a lot of advance notice and public participation. So any change is going to take, you know, assuming we hit the ground running, I would say it would take 2-3 months. But we're not hitting the ground running. We're hitting the ground from nothing.
We're hitting the ground and stopping.
And we're hitting the ground with no preliminary work behind it. I mean, it's just, we're going to have to start studying it.
Yeah, just to put, I think we're currently on draft 20 of the tree law as it stands right now.
it shouldn't be that complicated.
Oh, Paul, from your mouth to God's ears.
Well, that's why I
You know.
think legislation should be kept separate from the tree law, and maybe it could be enacted more easily.
That'd be nice. We're not starting from anywhere. It's not like we proposed legislation. We didn't. So we're going to have staff look at it, talk to us about it, have the attorney draft legislation. You know, that's all going to have to be done.
I just
Where-
think if we can keep it separate from the tree law, it would be better.
Yeah, I agree. But once we start discussing it, I'm just giving you a heads up. There will be discussions of, well, the tree law is handling this. Let's wait on that. So the tree portion of it, I would just say, is going to be a little thornier because it overlaps with the pending tree law work.
Maybe it can be addressed one point at a time.
I think that would probably be best.
The problem is that trees prevent flooding. You know, 1 acre of trees equals, 9 acres of bare ground as far as absorbing everything. So, this isn't some light, something to be considered lightly.
It's not. One thing you might want to do is try to have a joint meeting with the tree committee and talk to them about the specific floodplain issues relative to trees. Maybe you want to do that.
It's probably always worth talking.
There's got to be somebody with the authority to make decisions, and apparently that isn't happening. You've got to have a staff member or an elected official that will tell us, okay, you guys sit down and work out an agreement. But, all I can see is, conflicts with two committees meeting.
Well, then it was just a suggestion. You don't have to do it.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
more
Want to
importantly,
reach out to the
let's
chair
try-
and invite her to a meeting to talk about it?
happy to
We
do
would
that.
have to-
I'm happy to do that. I think what we should do though is if the tree point is going to drag down the other two pieces and we can more easily pass the other two pieces, we should separate so that it doesn't all get dragged down.
Is Stuart still on the tree committee?
No,
No,
Okay.
So Kelly, how do we go about separating those 3 points so that maybe 1 and 2 can be more easily?
when they go onto the work session agenda, I'll just ask that they be separated.
Okay. But I presented to the work session, right?
Yep, it was a presentation to the work session.
Okay.
But
So
it was-
it needs to be brought up again?
Now it needs to go onto the agenda as an item to get work.
Okay.
And I'm just telling you from a practical perspective, we're going to ask for the engineer to look at it. Right now, we don't have an engineer. We're going to ask for the building department to give us some input. They are completely backlogged. We're going to ask for the village planner to look at it. The planning department is,
I don't have one of those either.
you know,
Right.
it's just, I mean,
Yep, I hear you.
it's hard. It's hard without COVID. And then you throw COVID on top of that. And I mean, it's
It's only going to get worse.
Hmm.
I mean, just keeping things running day to day is, you know,
Okay,
I'm glad we're doing as well as we're doing.
okay.
But
Dan,
but when it does come up, I'm sorry, but when we do make it onto the agenda, I will ask that it be separated in order to get things done more quickly. I also want to give you an update about the law that I sent you about last time having to do with the 50-foot setback. That has been kicked back to the public hearing was closed, and that has been kicked back to the Board of Trustees work sessions to start over, basically start over.
And
And that is something that we started working on like with staff in August of 2019.
I looked at the portion of the village board meeting last night when this was discussed.
Yep.
And, you know, Kelly, I was one of the original members of the HCZMC and helped to write the LWRP. So my whole task on that was to, you know, write regarding flooding. So I've had, aside from being flooded in our house on Waverly, you know, I've had quite a bit of experience with this. I know there was some talk about giving the ZBA ultimate authority.
Yeah.
Absolutely, positively against that.
I agreed with you a year ago, and
Oh,
yeah, no,
I'm
I
just saying,
agree with you.
there are different philosophies of the different boards. You know, the planning board tends to look ahead. The zoning board looks for a reason to give a variance, to give maximum development to the applicant. That's the way they work. And that's the way they've been doing it in the village. All you have to do is look at Brixmore.
Yeah, but the
Which is a-
board has changed since Brixmore. I mean, I do think it's,
But people that go on that board have a certain outlook.
but not recently. I really beg to differ.
yeah,
Well,
but I think to a certain extent, Paul, the one of the things I took away from last night's public hearing is the board has achieved an enlightened view of this matter, and I think tend to agree with you that the appeal process should be either to the planning board or the HCZM. I mean, I think that's a fair statement.
you know, HCZM was originally basically founded by Mayor Oppenheimer to be a check and a balance on the granting of variances by the planning board and the zoning board, because they were starting to go crazy. So, you know, I mean, we have the authority of New York State Coastal Resources. You know, CZM has almost as much authority as a zoning board, but with a different outlook. And that's preserving. So, you know, I would give it to HCZM, but I'm prejudiced. But definitely not zoning, definitely not. Too many Brixmores will go up, and, you know, the 50-foot setback versus 100 you have to realize that you want to give things to the commercial district and
You
the
know what?
commercial builders. However, what the commercial building does is it affects the residential. And nobody wants to realize that.
It was not a 100-foot setback that was changed to 50-foot setback. That is a factual misunderstanding about what this law did. So
It was always 50 feet?
Tom's memory is that it was 50 feet and there was a special use permit. And when we changed PLLC, we took away the option of getting a special use permit. So there was no way you could get a variance. And what we're trying to do is build that variance safety valve back into the law, because we have essentially prohibited certain building lots in the village from being developable at all by this 50-foot setback, because there's no safety valve. So there needs to be some safety valve by which an applicant can come and say, due to these circumstances, you know, I need permission to build within the 50-foot setback. And in many cases, there are already buildings within the 50-foot setback, and maybe they want to remove those buildings and infringe within 10 feet. You know, within 40 feet, but go 10 feet in. Who knows? But right now they can't do it. So we're trying to put a safety valve back in, and it's a question of whether the HCZM allows that, the zoning board, because it is kind of a variance. So that's where they got the zoning board, and a sense on the board of trustees that the zoning board was being very strict about granting variances, whether it is the planning board. We discussed it since August of 2019.
If you'd given this authority to the zoning board, the Marinick Beach and Yacht would be condos right down to the shoreline.
But you're assuming the prior makeup of the zoning board, and I'm telling you, it's very different makeup.
But it shouldn't matter who the people on the boards are, because that's going to change from generation to generation. It's a matter of the best way of affecting the laws.
And you're absolutely right. But my point in bringing this
So
up
with
is,
the organization, not the members.
but my point in bringing it up is to let you know that there is now plenty of time for the flood committee to weigh in on how they'd like this law to be finalized or drafted.
Well, and HCCM should have a major say in it.
No, but what Kelly is saying is we should be weighing in as to where we
Oh, yeah,
feel.
yeah.
I'm saying feel free.
So that's something we should probably, is there more that we can read up on in history or?
No, I provided you the link, which is the backup, and I
Right.
would just say stay with that.
Okay. So why don't we put it on the agenda for next meeting to discuss this at greater length when we're more up to speed?
And I think actually that Westchester County has a setback law on shoreline development. And it may be 100 feet.
And if I'm not mistaken, the way we found out about this was, which I do have a bone to pick, but was from Gina Van Ives' letter, which said that the DEC also had standards. Why aren't we simply following that?
I do think that Gina has fundamentally misunderstood a lot about this.
Does somebody have a radio on or something? All kinds of feedback coming through. No?
I'm hearing it too, Peggy.
I'm just, if somebody has one on, could they turn it off, please? Or
But
TV.
Gina had a lot of good things to say last night. I mean, I don't know about the accuracy of some of them,
Yeah.
but her wish to preserve was very well put.
Is
I mean,
anyone
she
else
has
hearing
residential
feedback?
property right there, within 50 feet of the river.
But this law doesn't apply to residential properties. But anyway,
Right.
I'm saying you have your opportunity. So there we are.
Well,
So
I
let's.
just want to make my opinions known to you.
Yep. And I would just suggest that if the flood committee wants to let their opinions be known, you have an opportunity now.
Why
Okay.
don't we, for our
Let's do
next
that.
meeting, for those of us, because I did not see the meeting last night, let's re-review what Kelly sent, and then let's each watch the meeting and see what was said, and then let's discuss it we probably won't meet in December. We generally, especially it's going to be too close to Christmas, we'll generally meet in January as our next meeting. So let's do that for January's meeting.
Sounds good.
Okay. Dan, thank you for your update on the Waverly Avenue Bridge. I do want to say I saw a miracle last week. The
Okay.
Anita Lane wing wall is gone.
Oh, wow.
It only took 13 years. And that's the short version because the Harding report said in 1945 that wing wall should be taken out. So
Progress.
it is progress. There's still a ton of scaffolding up,
Yeah.
but the wing wall is definitely on the edge of the river.
Yeah.
And they did a whole lot of bank casting in concrete.
I haven't really looked at it. I can, get another update from the county.
I sent George Latimer a thank you.
Okay.
I went by it just to say, finally, thank you. But 13 years, we got something done.
Yeah.
Next one. Oh. Back to the setbacks from the commercial areas. Aren't there also, Kelly, are there FEMA standards? I meant to ask that earlier. Are there FEMA standards that we should also be looking at? Has anybody looked into that?
That's a good question. I think they were looked into because I know when we put this language together, we did use FEMA and New York State language in our proposed legislation.
Yeah.
But as this goes back, it's all going to go back again. And as Victor pointed out last night, there's some new model language and model legislation that came out, and we're going to be using that as well.
Okay.
I mean, I think again, we also have our floodplain development law, which is, technically the federal government recommendation is 1 foot above base flood of elevation. In New York State, we use 2 feet.
I didn't know.
That's the state
Okay.
recommendation. So, that's the one that came from the DEC Bureau of Floodplain Management, which is what we've been operating under since, the most recent version was
I never
adopted
knew that.
in 2007 with the 2 feet above. So,
Okay.
Have you checked with the Department of State Coastal Resources offices? Because they're the ones, that were the environmentalists. They're the ones we worked with for the LWRP.
I mean, in terms of model language for the
Yeah.
setback law, I don't know that. I mean, it was prepared by the village attorney. So,
But I'm making a note of that, Paul.
Yeah, I know there's always a fight between the DEC and the DOS. They hate each other.
Okay. Last thing. Favorite topics. 16.0, actually 2 topics. 1606 Ellis. When we met last month, we were going to look into what the setbacks are from the floodway, not just the flood zone. Has that been looked into?
I was not at the last
No.
meeting. So, I mean, I can,
Can we find that out, please?
yeah, I'll talk to building department tomorrow, see if I can look at the plans.
And I just wanted to show you this, and I don't know if you can all see this, but this is a picture of the foundation, and I will send it around. I'm sorry, there's been a lot going on and I haven't done that. Look how high up the flood vent is off the ground, which is where the brown is. It's like a good 4 feet off the ground. Oops, my flood vents are about 12 to 18 inches off the ground. It seems to me if this house is taking on this kind of water and the flood vents are that high up, the hydrostatic pressure is going to be impossible on this foundation. This just doesn't look right. And I will send this around, I'm sorry.
Now, there were 2 of those, right, Peggy?
There
two?
were 7 of them. I think there are 5 or 7 of them total.
Oh, okay.
But they're all high up on the foundation as opposed to being at the base of the foundation. And from everything that I went through with my house and that my neighbors have, because a number of them have put in flood vents as well, you're this high off the ground. I mean, they're literally at the base of the ground so that the foundation won't be undermined. And you won't have what I had, which is your rear foundation wall collapsing. So I don't know how that got approved, Dan. That just doesn't look right to me. So I'll send the picture around to everybody. But if we can look into that for our next meeting.
Yeah, I can ask our engineers if they can give a more technical explanation.
Because I know what we had to go through.
Okay.
And they had, just logically speaking, unless I'm misinterpreting something, you want them down low rather than high up.
Is there a standard how many there has to be per foot?
Yes. Yeah, FEMA sets that.
Well, there also you get into, do we want the 50-foot setback from rivers for residential property?
Well, we did on Ellis, but that didn't happen.
Oh, yeah, but I mean, that's, when you're in a flood zone, the water doesn't care whether you're commercial or residential.
That's a good point. Is there a reason it's only commercial, Kelly?
Because that's the only property we were looking at with PLLC. And in that commercial area, we're already dealing with such severe restrictions that we're concerned with takings claims. I think so much of the village residential property is within 50 feet of a river. We'd have to get serious legal guidance on whether we should.
Well, it would only be for new construction.
It would, but where, we have a number of properties that are currently on, within 50 feet. And if you do a tear down, then you're new construction. I mean, that's what's happening in our commercial zones. That's why we're in such a mess trying to correct this problem and provide a safety valve, because we've essentially rendered those properties unimprovable.
Well, as long as you go through the standards, I had to follow proper FEMA guidance when I raised the house and had to cantilever because of the floodway. Mm-hmm. So wouldn't we want best building practices, whether it's commercial or residential in a flood zone?
Yes, but you can't take a person's property and make it worthless. I mean, that's the legal problem.
But you can make them build up.
Yes, we can.
I mean, they had a residential property on, I don't know, Northrop or somewhere back there. It was done beautifully.
Yeah, that was the one on Northrop, Nostrand.
Nostrand, yeah.
But yeah, that was also, I think that was built by
Habitat
for Humanity.
But it still had to pass FEMA standards.
Yeah,
my husband actually worked on that house. He built the roof. He was on the roof, putting on the roof.
Yeah, one of the other things is if you ever had a chance to take a look at our low to moderate income areas, a lot of those areas are along the river, susceptible to flooding. Mm-hmm. As Kelly mentioned, one of the concerns we would have would be devaluing the property or making it, or putting someone in a position where they couldn't afford to, improve their property. And that's, I think that's the issue.
With all due respect, I don't think you're devaluing those homes. Those homes have been devalued because of the flood risks. And that's already built into the cake.
Yeah, they're uninsurable, basically.
And they're unsaleable.
Yeah.
Are additions considered new construction?
I'm sorry, Steve?
Would additions be considered new construction? A home addition, if I'm building another room onto the home, to an existing home.
If I put an addition now onto my house, based on the fact that it's in the floodway and the flood zone, I would be limited into where I could put the addition and how I could put it on. Mm-hmm. And so
it would have to be elevated.
Not only would it have to be elevated, my great room had to be cantilevered because I couldn't build anywhere near the floodway. I had setbacks from the floodway.
And also, I'm sorry.
So I don't understand. I would think that this is applicable to both. And we're talking about new construction. If somebody was to raise their house, if I was to take this house down now and rebuild, it would have to be done within FEMA standards, period. So I don't think there's any devaluation going on by passing this law.
Because there's another thing people do. They just leave enough of the house where it isn't a tear down. I know that there's the ability to do that too. I mean, how are we, like if it's an addition to an existing house, or if it's not really a tear down, but it is a tear down? Do you know what I'm kind of getting at? Like what are the,
Leave X percentage of the foundation wall.
yeah, like what's,
Well-
what are the regulations around those, and should they be different than they are?
And I don't know the answers to those questions. Those are questions about the building code, but that is something that certainly this committee can look at and talk about and to study and recommend changes to the building code if they'd like.
I mean, when we sold our house on Waverly, the FEMA wanted flood insurance for the buyer on the entire square footage of the property, not the house. It was the whole thing. So, you know, that destroys, you know, any incentive to do anything with your property. They're uninsurable as far as flood insurance is concerned. The only way to do it is to elevate.
And they're unsaleable because nobody wants to live that way.
Yeah, nobody wants to pay 18, 20,000 a year for flood insurance.
Yeah, but even if you're paying the insurance policy, who wants to have water in their living quarters?
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, you know, we had 8 feet of water in our basement on Waverly.
I would have taken that.
Yeah.
All right, let's keep moving on. Dan, can you explain? I don't think I did a good enough job when Steve and I were taking a walk the other day, and I was trying to explain illegal sump pump connections in the village and why we have the laws on the books. So you'll do a much better job at it than I will.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. So for people who have sump pumps in their home, oftentimes what was done in the past is you can't put water in, you can't put non-polluted water into your sanitary sewer system. So people would take their sump pumps, which were collecting water, flood water, and they were put into their sanitary sewer lateral to go out to the system.
Yeah.
What that causes is the sanitary sewage plants are rated to process a certain amount of sewage per day.
Yeah, it's an overload.
Yeah, it's
Wasn't it like
so-
25 million, and in 2009 it went to
It was
125?
96 or something.
So let me see if I can remember, because it was the former commissioner Tom Lauro came to a meeting of a group called LISWIC, Long Island Sound Watershed Intermunicipal Council. I think he said on an average day, they treat, so it's either 9 or 11 million gallons per day.
Mhm.
The plant is rated to treat, I think, up to 30 million gallons per day, or 35 million gallons per day. The nor'easter of April 15th, 2007, the plant process, they handled 96 million gallons.
Yeah.
It's all because of stormwater getting into the sanitary system. That's a no-no. The stormwater has to go to the storm sewer system. So that's kind of the short version of it. And that's called IDDE. We have an IDDE program, illicit discharge and detection elimination.
So before you sell your house, you have to get a certificate from a plumber stating that there are no illegal hookups.
Yeah.
And they also have to do a video verifying that.
Yeah.
So I know several years ago, 7, 8 years ago, my house was, legally, I had the building inspector come, I had a French drain system, and it goes into us. I don't know what it goes into, but it was legal 8 years ago. And that's my concern, is that legal?
It should be, because the village work, and I think you talk about Wagner Avenue or Florence.
I'm on Florence Place, Florence Street.
So I think maybe 13, 14 years ago, this is before I started with the village, we worked with Westchester County, and they did a study of, I believe it was Florence, Wagner, and then some areas in Orienta. and they identified a number of properties that had issues. Over the course of, I'll say, maybe 2008, 2009, 2010, and then going into like 2012, 13 is when we worked to clear all those issues out. So at that time, which would have been 8 or 9 years ago, if you did not have a meeting with your friendly neighborhood building inspector or code enforcement officer, you should be in good shape. As long as we didn't tell you had a problem, you should be good.
Okay, because that was my concern, that I had a problem that I can't see because I had the building inspector come and say it was okay when I installed it. So,
Well, yeah, no, like I said, we basically, it's a process. We know what properties had issues.
Mhm.
So by deduction, we know which properties don't have issues.
right. Okay, so as long as I don't have a problem, when I try to sell my house, I don't have I'm good.
Regardless, if and when you sell your house, you have to have a plumber certified. There are no legal connections. And then you also are required to have an inspection of your sewer lateral to make sure it's in good working order and there are no major defects in it.
Okay.
But so I never promise anyone there's in good shape, but you should be in good shape.
Okay, 'cause that was obviously my concern, and
Okay.
and I'm
Yeah, but
good.
now that you're on the flood committee, you can't go anywhere.
I'm good. We're not going. We're not planning on going anywhere. So
Good.
I think we're good for now. Anybody have anything else?
No?
Robert, we're gonna miss you.
Yes.
Yeah, before we
I
end,
have a few,
I was going to say before.
I had
we,
a few things to add to the amendment.
Oh,
Sure.
go ahead.
You want to talk? Go ahead, Kelly.
No, I just want to thank you for serving on the flood committee for all these years. And you have been a wonderful member and serving as secretary most recently. I mean, it's just been a pleasure to work with you. And I want to thank you for adding so much to the committee, Robert. I hope that when you're eligible to join us again, you'll consider coming back and that you will consider working on other committees because you're definitely just a wonderful asset to the village. I want to thank you.
A little background. When I was approached to be on a committee, it was suggested I go on the traffic committee. I said, that doesn't sound very interesting. Flood, that sounds interesting. After I attended my first meeting, I said, oh my God, I'm in way over my head. I don't have a clue what they're talking about. And it's taken me a long time
It takes a long time to
get a basic understanding of what the issues are, but it's been fun. I still have a couple of items that you may want to go over.
Yes, please.
You want me to start?
Sure.
You want me to go over the items? Okay. One is the Waverly Avenue Bridge. Dan provided a lot of very detailed information about what's going on with the Waverly Avenue Bridge. Bottom line is, he said we should expect construction to start the end of 2020, the end of 2021, early 2022. So I thought that was relevant. I don't know if anybody saw Dan's attachment about what was done in Waverly, if Dan wants to add anything. The other thing was about Peggy, you brought up a new construction on Waverly. Yeah?
Yeah, you know what, I looked back.
You want to speak, Dan?
It's not in the flood zone. I did some research when I finally got the address and it's out of the flood zone.
Okay, so we'll drop that?
Yep, we're good. Don't need
The
to.
construction on Waverly?
Yeah, it's 521.
The other is
and I thought that would be in the flood zone, but it was not.
All right, so I don't have to track that.
I'm sorry?
I don't need to track that on the minutes. We're removing it.
Yep, it's dead.
Third item is we never got a update on the ACE project, where we are. Tom was going to follow up. Other people were going to follow up. Do you want to continue to look for information on that or just see what happens? Did you hear me?
Dan, I'm thinking you're going to field that question.
Well, okay, so, I mean, with the Army Corps project, obviously it wasn't funded in the last federal budget. So now you have a change in the executive. You may have a change in the, who the Senate Majority Leader is. So, I mean, those could be items that will play in the village's favor. So,
But it seemed that we had that young woman who joined us from Senator Schumer's office a few
Yeah.
months ago, and that they're still working on it, and there's still money left to work on it, and
well, I think there was money to do minor aspects of the project.
engineering, some of
Yeah,
the engineering.
Yeah, I think I talked to the board or to the committee about what they call PED, pre-engineering design. And they were trying to find an aspect of the project which they could do that for. I recall that they were trying to do the pre-engineering design for the Ward Avenue Bridge replacement.
Yep.
But that was the last I've heard of it.
Since we're not meeting again until January, maybe Dan, you can reach out to Senator Schumer's office, to that person, and just get an update for us. Maybe there's some news that they know.
Sure.
And maybe we can have her back a few months into the new administration,
Yep.
now that we have a new administration.
And just, hearkening back to Robert with the bridges, if you have any questions, you always feel free to reach out to me. Between we have Post Road, Hillside, Waverly, we have the work going on up by the waterworks and the Anita Lane Bridge. So it's a bridge.
And Boston Post Road.
Yeah.
So we
I've
have
got to say-
5 bridge projects actively in design or implementation right now.
One up by the Heights has really not been that terrible yet.
Yeah.
They've managed to keep the traffic moving.
Yeah, that was always planned to have the traffic open.
No, they kept 2 lanes open. I thought they were only going to keep 1 in each direction. They kept 2 going towards White Plains.
Okay.
So it's actually been pretty good.
But I said, if anyone has questions about the bridge projects, reach out to me and I can let you know what's going on with them.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Okay, all? Anything else?
Have a great Thanksgiving, everyone.
You too. Everyone stay safe, stay healthy.
Nice to meet you, Stephen.
Same here.
You need to take a motion to.
Rob, stay well. Take care of the pussycat.
just
Well,
need-
It was a pleasure.
need a
Go
motion
feed the
to-
cat.
You need a
I
motion to
did.
close the meeting.
He's on the radiator.
Okay.
Keep him
Meeting
warm.
is
Anything.
officially closed at 8:25 PM.
Well, you have to take a vote in a second and motion. in a
We
second.
do to close the meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
We did before. Okay, I'd like a motion to close the meeting.
So
I'll make a
moved.
motion to close.
All in favor?
Okay.
All
Happy
Aye.
Thanksgiving, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, stay healthy.
Yes.
Stay well.
January. Bye-bye.
See you next year.